Let's close off this masterclass with a couple of lessons that can really turn you into a pro. Don't get me wrong, even without this module, you're now equipped to handle any kind of UI project when it comes to typographic needs. But building further on a couple of other skills and best practices can really make you stand out as a type master. I handpicked a dozen of typefaces here and we will analyze them together, think about what makes them unique and what would they be ideal for. One of the most common elements you might analyze in a typeface are its characters and glyphs. An uppercase G is a great thing to look at. Does it have a spur or not? Lowercase a, G, Q, and others are also interesting. Are they single or double story? Those characters can help tell you how traditional or constructed does the entire typeface feel. Sometimes a completely different character stands out and has something very unique and uncommon about it, just like these examples. C and E are two other interesting glyphs to analyze. How open are their counters? More closed-off shapes are less legible but give a bit more personality to a typeface. Sometimes they can even feel quirky because of how closed off they look. Commas, tittles, and descenders are also telling you a lot about a typeface and what it communicates to the users. When analyzing typefaces, curves, tails, joints, ears, overshoots, terminals, and more are all interesting characteristics to look at. For example, does a double-story A have a tail? How big are those overshoots? Does an ear exist? Is it more linear or floppy? Are terminals vertical or angled? How does that affect the typeface overall? Besides the specific elements of each glyph, sometimes the overall feel is influenced by the way a typeface was designed entirely. Chunkier serifs, for example, make a typeface feel more modern than elegant. It's up to you as a designer to ensure that your choices aren't too over the top. You can have a desired brand feel without it being too much. It's important to analyze the type features of a typeface. Does it have all the necessary characters and symbols? Does it have tabular or old-style numerical characters if those are needed for your project? How many weights does the typeface have? How about widths? Is it part of a superfamily or not? If you don't have a typeface installed and are planning to purchase it, see if there's a demo you can download. A lot of foundries and typefaces offer a weight or two you can download for free. Check reviews made by other designers. Investigate type specimens. Most high-quality foundries have specimens you can scroll through, and you can use them to learn more about the typeface and how flexible or not it is. Check the optical sizes since they differ from typeface to typeface. Let's look at this example. Both typefaces are set to 16 points, but one clearly feels larger. Use that information when you're planning your line heights too. We already touched upon legibility a lot, but I can't stress it enough. Especially for body typefaces, it's a must. X height can help you figure out if this typeface works better for body copy or headings. What is the stroke contrast? How heavy does it feel? Counters are also crucial. Let's analyze a couple of these typefaces. Which one of them feels more legible due to the size of its counters? Which one feels like it would be least legible on a smaller screen size? The final exercise I'd love to do with you in this lesson is to talk more about classifications and what features and characteristics to look out for to be able to identify classifications correctly. The so-called serif dynamic typefaces are very similar in style to calligraphy. The shapes feel very humane and handwritten. If you can see angled stress in letters like lowercase o or e, you are most likely looking at a dynamic serif. Counters tend to be very large, as you can once again see from the lowercase e example. Terminals are similar in style to those you'd expect from calligraphy, and serifs look more organic and less constructed. They're also often asymmetrical. Contrast is moderate. Now, that doesn't mean that all of these need to apply to a typeface for it to be considered dynamic, but the more of this characteristic that a typeface has, the more likely it is that we'd classify it as dynamic, humanistic, Gerald, and so on. There are so many typefaces, and most of the newer ones have elements from multiple categories. However, the most characteristics fall under one. That is one of the reasons why it takes time and practice to be able to recognize these classifications easily, especially when you think how easy it is to tell a serif font apart from a sans serif font. However, as you already know, we did the hard work for you, and you can use the Excellent Typefaces ebook and Notion table to identify these classifications and categories while learning how to do it yourself. Let's move on to the transitional serifs. Lowercase o's tend to have vertical stress, while other characters like the lowercase e still keep the angle stress. It's one of the first things to check when you're trying to identify a transitional serif. Terminals are often bulbous and serifs are blunt and more balanced. In general, the letter forms seem more rationally coordinated with one another. They're more regular and less organic in shape. Contrast is a lot more eminent. The final type of serifs to analyze fall under the static category. Modern, Didone, and neoclassical typefaces fall under this category. The letter forms appear constructed. Thin symmetrical horizontal serifs are easily noticeable. Stress is always vertical, and terminals tend to be more bulbous. Contrast is even more eminent. It's one of the reasons why these typefaces end up being used more for display use than body use. High contrast in characters results in a worse legibility for smaller type sizes. Are you feeling at least a bit more confident in your skills of being able to tell these categories apart? Amazing. Let's now move on to sans serifs. When it comes to sans serifs, as we already know, there are 4 categories, not 3. The first ones are dynamic sans serifs. As with serifs, these typefaces feel more organic. Stress can be slightly angled, counters are wide open, and X height tends to be a bit large. These sans serifs feel more handwritten in a sense. Terminals follow the stroke consistently, and there is little stroke contrast. On the other hand, transitional sans serifs are better known as realistic, grotesque, and gothic. They have regular proportions, and their strokes tend to turn inwards. One of the most recognizable elements of a transitional sans serif is the G with a spur, uppercase G. Apertures are close. Lower X height is one of the reasons why some people avoid using them for body text. I think it depends on the type of the project, but they do have a recognizable personality, which makes them feel less natural than a body typeface should feel. The name grotesque even comes from the fact that the style wasn't originally enjoyed by all. Taking everything that we know about grotesque or transitional sans serif typefaces, we can move into the neo-grotesque or static category. The hardest ones to tell apart are transitional and static sans serifs. Static or neo-grotesque sans serifs have little to no contrast in the strokes. Terminals are usually perfectly straight, and that gives them more of a geometric appearance. Stress is vertical, as you can easily see from the lowercase o and e. One thing I look for are the consistent terminals. For example, put a lowercase e next to an s, and if their terminals feel like they form a straight line, it's a good sign you're looking at the static sans serif. Single story G is much more common in static sans serifs, but it's not a rule, and X height is relatively high. Finally, let's talk about geometric sans serif typefaces. They are the most static of all the groups. They are constructed using geometric forms with round or square sections, and the contrast is minimal. Rounded forms are virtually circular, and single-story A is common. X height is a bit lower, and geometric shapes can have uneasily noticeable optical adjustments. Terminals are horizontal and stress is vertical. Trying to identify these characteristics in real time and looking at each of these aspects with a little more focus will slowly but surely turn you into a pro. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.